Hello and welcome to a new episode of In the District. Today we're sitting down with Council Member Oswald Feliz from the 15th Council District, including the neighborhoods of Fordham, Belmont, East Tremont, West Farms, Van Ness, and Allerton. Join us to discuss his legislative initiatives, community and economic development, and so much more. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and this program is brought to you from BronxNet's brand new media and technology studios here in the South Bronx. Councilmember Feliz, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with you today.
Now, I'm so glad to learn a little bit more about you and your work. I understand that you're a lifelong Bronx resident. How has your upbringing and education, just in the Bronx in public schools shape and influence your approach to your role as council member?
Absolutely. I grew up in the Fordham section of the Bronx, went to local public schools, also loved playing baseball in our local parks. So I was able to get a good experience in the local vicinity. But I was also able to see the challenges that we have, whether it's disinvestment in our schools, in our parks, in our general infrastructure. I said, there's a lot of things that I could do as a lawyer, but I decided to use all the skills that I've learned as a lawyer and as an educator to enter government and help improve my local community.
Now, we're definitely going to delve more into that, but I'm curious to know a little bit more about your Lehman College experience. BronxNet is based at Lehman College for many of the shows that we do. So can you talk about your experience at Lehman College and, how has it shaped your perspective on education and public service?
Absolutely. Graduated from Lehman College in 2013. I was able to double major in political science and philosophy. During my time at Lehman College, I also had the privilege of serving as the president of the student government. We were very involved as the president. I was able to work with our team to not only increase library hours. That was one priority that we heard from students when we would speak with them. They wanted the library to open earlier and also close later so they could have more study hours. We were able to successfully increase library hours, also implement a pre-law program. So I think that had that was had a big impact. It taught me very early that when you make your voice heard and you work on a local initiative, you can achieve it. You could improve the lives of the people that you represent with hard work.
Now, kind of delving more into your educational background, you also served as an adjunct professor at Hostos Community College. What lessons did you learn from teaching, students from underserved areas, and, how do you apply that to your work now?
Yeah, my time teaching at Hostos Community College reminds me of my time at when I was a student at Bronx Community College. Very similar schools. They serve students that are in many different walks of life, disadvantaged, many who attended underperforming high schools, but also some which, for example, recently arrived from different parts of the world, learning a new language. I've had a great experience teaching English, writing, making sure that people could polish up their writing skills, something that they'll be able to use in every part of their work life.
Now, I was really surprised to see that you also have a background in legal, which is pretty amazing. I want to say congratulations on that because it takes a lot of work to kind of even just kind of scratch the surface of that industry. So can you tell me a little bit more about that experience and how it has shaped your role now, in regards to defending Bronx residents?
Yep, and it's very interesting. When I was at Lehman College, I studied political science, not because I wanted to be a politician, but because I was told that was the closest thing to studying law, learning the system of government. And then eventually I went to law school, and after graduating, passed the bar, studied practiced law, but then I got dragged back into politics, so that's interesting. But my time when I was practicing law was was really able to give back to the community. Practicing tenant law, landlord-tenant law, defending tenants who were at risk of eviction, at risk of losing their homes, but also tenants who were being harassed by their landlord. For example, I represented a 50-tenant association. The landlord didn't provide heat and also gas for almost a year. So we formed the tenant association. We were able to get them to file one class action lawsuit, and we were able to get the heat restored and also held the landlord accountable. So yeah, we had a great time defending the people of the Bronx.
And I also want to add that I recently were able to see you in action, implementing this because I believe recently, a few weeks ago, the Fordham houses or, apartments were kind of experienced tenant harassment. And you were there kind of advocating for the people,
Yep.
there in the Bronx. So can you tell me just very briefly about that experience and, how you're still continuing to do this work?
Yeah, that case, we've been working with those tenants for over a year now. The building currently has over 500 violations. In my time as a tenant lawyer, I had never seen that amount of violations. That's a landlord who simply does not care. About a year ago, I sent a letter to the landlord saying that they have these conditions and that they don't fix them. We will be helping the tenants so they can file a lawsuit. Eventually, Legal Aid filed a lawsuit, and that still hasn't pushed the landlord to fix the conditions. Classic example of landlord harassment, and it's a privilege to be able to be there for those tenants in not only fighting for the repairs, but also holding that bad landlord accountable.
And just listening, it's amazing to see how your previous work is, impacting the work that you're doing now, possibly even on a larger scale. So that's so amazing to hear. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about legislative initiatives. I understand that you introduced 14 bills in current legislative session with a focus on issues such as safety standards for powered bicycles and mobility devices. What prompted you to prioritize this specific legislation?
Yeah, in my district, we had the devastating Twin Parks tragedy, fire that took the lives of 17 innocent members of our community. It wasn't caused by a lithium-ion battery or by an e-bike, but that showed how much damage a fire could do. A fire that started due to a space heater, but it doesn't matter what starts the fire. Fires could have devastating impacts for entire communities. Now, on the issue of fire, at the same time, we saw a drastic increase in fires due to those e-bikes. Not all e-bikes, but specifically those that are cheaply designed. Last year, we had about over 200 fires due to these e-bikes, many deaths. So I said, this is an issue specifically affecting the Bronx, affecting every part of the city, but especially the Bronx. So I said, let's make that a priority to make sure that we don't have a tragedy that escalates to the one that we saw in Twin Parks.
And I also want to add that here in the Bronx, so many people rely on these e-bikes for, their livelihoods. They, work in the service industry, delivering food. And so I think it was such an important thing to fully address because we don't want to completely eliminate someone's livelihood if they need these bikes, but we do want people in the Bronx to be safe. So I was really glad to hear that there was something being addressed in that regard. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about one of your proposed bills that aims to prohibit homeless families with children from being housed in buildings with multiple Class C housing maintenance code violations. This kind of relates to some of the work that you've been doing previously. Can you explain the significance of this bill and how it will impact the community?
Yeah, our families who don't have a home, these are some of our most vulnerable families. Low-income families don't have all the resources to be able to properly defend themselves. And really important that if the city is going to play a role in helping them obtain housing, temporary housing in this instance, it's important that we provide housing that is safe. We've had cases where individuals living in a facility like this, where the radiator is defective, it eventually ends up exploding. We had a case where it drastically harmed a minor. We need to make sure that our most vulnerable families, we help them the right way. And that includes a lot of different pieces, which includes making sure that the housing is safe and healthy.
And with that being said, for anyone watching who may be experiencing some of these issues within their building, what are their rights? Or, could you quickly let us know what they can do if they are experiencing this and they feel a sense of hopelessness because they are dealing with harassment and they just don't know what to do?
Absolutely. The first rule that I tell everybody is, especially rent stabilized tenants, which are different from those that live in co-ops and et cetera, you have a right to repairs, and the landlord cannot charge you for them. We've heard landlords trying to charge tenants, and I think that's just another form of harassment, right? Keeping an apartment in disrepair and then making it even more difficult by telling tenants that, you need to pay this much for repairs. So that's the first general rule. You have a right to repairs that are timely and also free of charge. At the same time, and especially low-income tenants, you could file a housing case for free in housing court if the landlord isn't keeping the apartment in good repair. But of course, make sure that you call and make sure that HPD conducts an inspection, just so that the city could conduct an inspection and they could document all the different conditions, and you could be in a better position when you go to housing court to be able to enforce the housing rights. So those are the very basic rules. Free repairs, make sure that the city inspects, and of course you could file a free case in housing court if there are conditions.
Now, I definitely want to take a moment to talk a little bit more about community and economic development. And in the Bronx, that of course starts with our small businesses and what many of us call mom and pop shops. One of the first concerns I understand is that there are a lot of vacant storefronts in the Bronx. Can you tell me a little bit more about your effort to address that and revitalize these areas?
Absolutely. The coronavirus pandemic affected our communities in many different ways, including and especially our small businesses, many of which had to shut down from a day to the next with very little to no notice. And of course, bills continued to pile up, including rent, which is very expensive, putting them in a really bad position, many which ended up going bankrupt, or many ended up having to permanently shut their doors. So today we have a very high amount of vacant storefronts. That's a big priority for me as the chair of the Small Business Committee. When we have vacant storefronts, we don't have just a vacant storefronts, but that's an opportunity loss for the neighborhood. That vacant storefront could be a business offering good jobs to the local community. Also, when you have a vacant storefront, that generally makes the area uninviting. People start dumping garbage in front of the vacant storefront. They fill up the gates with graffiti. And not only does that cause public safety issues and just makes the area uninviting, but that also hurts the surrounding businesses. It reduces foot traffic in the area, which ends up hurting the business next door, and so much more. So as chair of the Small Business Committee, we have a lot of priorities. One of them is to make it easier to open up your shop. Government should be helping these businesses open up their shop rather than putting obstacles. So for example, making sure that if there's a business that wants to fully remodel the layout, making sure they could quickly obtain the permits, they don't have to wait months for them to be able to start work, which could delay the opening of their business, and so much more. But yeah, taking steps so that it could be very easy to open up your business.
Now, I'm curious to know from your perspective, what are the type of businesses you would like to see kind of grow and just, see more throughout the Bronx?
Yeah, it depends on in the area. I represent Fordham Road. It's the busiest commercial corridor in the entire Bronx.
Right.
One of the busiest in the entire city. We have a lot of retail there, and that's great. I actually still shop in Fordham Road. Areas like that, I think they need a little bit of, bring some restaurants just to mix it up a little bit. So yeah, always good to have a very diverse commercial district. So in the areas that have a lot of restaurants, maybe bring some retail, other types of businesses. Areas like Fordham Road, bring some food so that those that are shopping in Fordham Road, they could also eat there as well.
Right, and I also want to quickly, discuss, I know there's a concern about gentrification in areas like Fordham Road where we're seeing more businesses, but they may not be owned by people who actually live in the community. Could you quickly, tell me your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. We need to make sure there's a lot of development happening all over the Bronx, and we have to make sure that we do responsible development, which means making sure that the housing is affordable. At the same time, a good amount of the housing is for the local residents. Of course, you can speak with any family and they'll say, hey, my grandma needs senior housing, or my children are ready to move out, they started their family. So we need to make sure we build affordable housing, and specifically for local residents in the Bronx. At the same time, doing more to empower the local community so they could open up a shop in their same neighborhood.
All right, well, thank you. It's time to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll get some final thoughts from Councilmember Oswald Feliz, representing the 15th Council District. Stay with us. Welcome back. Hope you're enjoying today's In the District discussion with Council Member Oswald Feliz. I want to thank you once again for joining us. We're having a really amazing conversation about the future of the Bronx and some of the things that you're working on. With that being said, I want to discuss that, in May, you announced a new initiative to crack down on organized retail theft. I actually was able to see you, kind of talk about this in person down at City Hall. So for those who weren't there, can you just give us an overview about, basically the purpose of that initiative?
Absolutely. Our city, especially since the pandemic, has been facing a lot of public safety issues. And that these issues haven't been affecting everybody equally, not those that work, let's say, in the 90th floor of a skyscraper. It has specifically been affecting those on the ground, including our local bodegas, which are in almost every single corner of every single community. Issues not only of assault against retail workers, but also a retail theft, which could easily escalate to an assault. So we're currently working with colleagues to be able to give tools to these bodegas to help deter this violence. For example, by providing grants, so they could pay, for example, security cameras. When there are security cameras, that could hopefully help deter. Also, panic buttons, plexiglass, alarms as well, to make sure that if we have a family that works 80 hours a week, somebody doesn't break in the middle of the night and takes all their earnings. So providing tools to help deter the conduct that we've seen, and especially in our bodegas.
And I want to take a moment to kind of talk about the impact this is having on the families, because most of these businesses are family owned. They're from people in the Bronx. A lot of the times they're also from people who may have been born in another country, who came here to make a life for themselves. And I want to discuss, in your experience, what have you seen or what impact is it having on so many of the people that pretty much service so much of the Bronx, because we depend on them for so many things?
Absolutely, yes. Many of them came here for a better life. They opened up their first ever business, and most of them work very proudly. I was speaking with a bodega owner, and he told me when he's behind that counter, he feels like the best. Like there's nothing better. He would not give that position for anything else. But at the same time, I spoke with another bodega owner who said they're in a neighborhood that has been disproportionately affected by violence. Inside the bodega, they get at least one incident per week, and they're terrified that that incident could escalate to something that they would not want to see in their bodega. So it's something horrible. Everybody deserves not only to have their hard work protected, but they also deserve to be safe in the workplace. So we're working on that. We're giving that a lot of attention, working with the mayor, the NYPD, and also all of our colleagues in the city and state and federal government, to make sure that we could do everything we possibly can to improve safety inside in every business, but especially in bodegas.
Now, in addition to public safety for the Bronx, I understand that you're also working on making the Bronx a greener borough. I know that is a big concern or a growing concern for many Bronx residents, basically just how much park space and how green, our borough is. Can you tell me a little bit more about Operation Green NYC bill and the work that you're putting into making sure that Bronx residents have, clean air or,
Yes.
Access to just more park space?
Absolutely. So in brief on the bill would require that the city construct 3 miles of greenery per year per borough. So every borough will get 3 miles per year per borough, and greenery specifically in our street medians. But we're thinking about expanding it to also cover the sidewalks. But one reason for that, if you drive, yesterday I was driving through Nassau County, and I saw their street medians, which generally divides the two sides of the street. They all had trees, greenery, looked beautiful. And then when I come to Fordham Road and Webster Avenue, there's a large median that takes up about many blocks, 10, 20 blocks, and it's only concrete. So, it's greenifying is a very easy way of getting so many different benefits in our communities. Not only cleaning our air, also reducing noise pollution. You obviously have a lot of cars in the streets, so the trees help block that noise. Also helps improve mental health. Just imagine walking around an area filled with trees, whether it's, walking to work, walking to school, or just taking a walk just to, for general health purposes, taking a walk in an area filled with greenery and trees. Obviously, that brings even more. That brings a lot of different, birds and stuff like that. So it just improves the environment.
Right.
Versus you have walking to school, to work, or just walking or jogging, and nothing but pavement or
Right.
concrete. It's a big difference.
And I also learned that, as we're dealing with these heat waves, trees really do help with cooling, the neighborhoods down. And in the Bronx, we don't have a lot of trees, so people are experiencing really extreme heat compared to other boroughs.
Yes.
And, I definitely noticed this, walking in certain areas in the Bronx versus, maybe other areas of the city. And I was really shocked to learn that. Can you just talk in that regard, I guess when we talk about, the heat waves and climate change, what are some of the concerns that you have, or, maybe some ways you plan to address that, especially as it, pertains to the Bronx?
Absolutely. That's a very complex problem, and I think everyone needs to help resolve it, because the city of New York could do a lot, but if the neighboring states aren't doing their part, then we're going to go back to square one. Their pollution is eventually their polluted airs are going to make their way into our community, causing asthma, causing climate change, and so much more. We have to do a lot on that. I know today we're having a lot of conversations about electric vehicles. These are great for the environment, a great initiative. At the same time, how accessible is an initiative like that if people can't charge their cars? If we don't have the infrastructure so people could be able to charge their cars? We might have this great idea, but we won't fully realize it, given that you have the vehicles, but the people can't charge them or can't easily charge them. Therefore, people aren't going to purchase them and have them. So we have a lot of work to do on that infrastructure. At the same time, we've had a lot of conversations for many years on capping the Cross Bronx. That's an expressway that, one of the busiest, if not the busiest, in the entire country. A lot of trucks, a lot of everything, not only air pollution, but also noise pollution. I was there a few days ago for just a few minutes, and every single second you just heard a loud truck. Not only the engine, but also the honking and etc. So that's another big priority for all of us in the Bronx, making sure that we can cap the Cross Bronx to make sure all that pollution isn't released into our communities, causing a lot of issues, again, climate change, but also asthma and so much more. And of course, turning it into a tunnel, for lack of a better term, and then installing filters so they could, the pollution isn't eventually released into our communities.
Now, with all of the things that we discussed, there's so many that you're addressing and that you're passionate about. But which one do you consider the most critical for the Bronx community, and why?
I'll say all of them. I would say just the overall safety. Not only safety in our bodegas and in our communities, but also safety from the environmental problems that we can see. Safety in for example, we have a section in the South Bronx, I don't know if they still call it, but they used to call it Asthma Alley. That's horrible. Imagine our most vulnerable communities, people who cannot afford to live anywhere else. They're forced to live there due to for many reasons. But they're exposed to drastic and unsafe levels of air pollution. That's horrible. So just making sure that people could live their lives in a safe way, safe from everything, whether it's gun violence, whether it's assault, or whether it's from the environment, making sure that they could all live safely. One thing that I learned in this role is people don't expect government to do magic. They just expect us to help them with the very basics so they could be able to work hard and achieve their dreams.
Now, with everything that we discuss, I want to go back to your, I guess, most important role is, being a Bronx resident, with that understanding what the Bronx people need. What is your long-term vision for the Bronx, and what key changes would you like to see during your tenure?
Yeah, so a lot of changes. My vision for the Bronx is, building vibrant communities, communities with state-of-the-art infrastructure, housing, schools, parks, and so much more. Making sure that the Bronx is generally as they say, a place where not all, but many people, they start from the bottom. Like my parents, for example, they came from the Dominican Republic in the late 80s. They started, as I say, they came here without a penny, started from the bottom. So many people are working their way up the economic ladder, and we need to create the conditions so they could be able to do that without obstacles. Making sure that our schools are properly funded, schools that have dignified spaces. One thing that I'm prioritizing, for example, as council member is making sure that we're renovating our school playgrounds. On my way here, actually right across the street, I saw a state-of-the-art playground, or that's more like a football field. You can do a lot there. Football, baseball, soccer. Building spaces like that where people could say, hey, I'm going to play baseball and I'm going to do it right in the corner of my neighborhood. We have a beautiful baseball field there. Also, of course, helping resolve the problems with the Cross Bronx. We have another similar challenge on Park Avenue in the Bronx. We have the Metro North, which we love. We love public transit. It runs basically like inside a gap, and it divided the two sides of the street. So I think we could apply the same concept to that. Keep the Metro North there, but then cap it and maybe turn it into 40 to 50 blocks of greenery for the community.
Well, I'm really excited to see how you, as well as your peers, transform the Bronx. I think as somebody who also grew up in the Bronx, I have seen some of the changes, even, just, from high school to going to college to now, becoming part of the workforce. I've seen how things have changed, and I look at schools and I think, oh, I wish my school had this.
Yes.
So I definitely, want to take the moment to appreciate the work that you and other council members and elected officials are doing to kind of better the Bronx. I think for a very long time, the Bronx had such a cloud surrounding, us and, how people viewed us compared to other boroughs. But I think that we're on our way to kind of like making amazing change. And with that being said, once again, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Can you quickly let everyone know how they can stay updated with you?
Yep, to stay up to date, feel free to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Oswald Feliz. We make sure that anytime there's a capital allocation, which is a big priority for us, bringing funds to renovate our schools, school auditoriums, playgrounds, or parks, we always post everything there. So Facebook is a great way. Also, for those that live in District 15, which covers Fordham Road, Tremont, West Farms, Atherton, Little Italy, you could also call our office if you have any questions or if you need any type of help, 718-842-8100.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for watching, and remember you can always watch this program anytime, anywhere on BronxNet.org and YouTube. While you're there, be sure to follow BronxNet on social media to find out who will be the next community leader we will sit down with on In the District. From BronxNet's Media and Technology Studios in the South Bronx, I'm Kibin Alleyne. Talk soon.